You know that feeling, right? When you're really trying to focus, maybe hit a deadline, or you're just feeling a bit under the weather and everything seems designed to make it harder.
Oh, yeah. Like trying to work with hammering next door. Or that presentation you
Uh,
have to give when you've got a banging headache.
exactly. That feeling of pushing through when things are just unnecessarily difficult. That's kind of the vibe that drew us into today's deep dive.
It really is. We've been digging into something that happened last year, Wednesday, April 9th, 2025.
Right. And this took place at a private school, wasn't it, in Singapalayam?
That's the one. A small village near Polachi, down in Coimbatore District, Tamil Nadu. Probably not a place you hear about often.
Which makes what happened even more, well, startling.
Definitely. So the core of it is this. A Class 8 student taking her social science exam
Okay.
was made to sit outside the classroom on the step.
Outside, on the steps, for an exam.
Yep. Just picture that. A big annual exam, and she's out there on a staircase trying to write.
Okay, wait. Why? What was the reason given?
Well, this is the part that just feels so out of step. The reported reason was that she was menstruating.
She had her period. That was the reason.
That was the reason given. It jars, doesn't it? With everything we understand now. This wasn't, some historical account. This was 2025.
Wow. Okay. So we need to unpack this. How did that even happen? What were the repercussions, the fallout?
And what does it tell us really about how tradition, or maybe perceived tradition, bumps up against just, well, basic practicality and kindness?
Let's get into it.
So from what we've pieced together,
Yeah.
this girl had recently started her period. And the family, actually, they were quite considerate initially.
Oh, so.
They kept her home for a couple of days first, which, probably reflects some common cultural feelings or practices around menstruation.
Which still happens, right, in many places in India. And honestly, variations of it exist globally. It's something lots of young women navigate.
Absolutely. But the key thing here, this wasn't just any school week. These were the annual exams. High stakes.
Ugh, okay, so not just a regular Tuesday. This really mattered.
Exactly. So, knowing this, the family actually contacted the school ahead of time.
Proactively.
Yes, the father spoke to the class teachers
Yeah.
and asked for something that sounds pretty reasonable, I think.
Which was?
Could they just arrange a separate desk and bench for her? Inside the exam hall? But maybe just slightly separate, given she might be uncomfortable.
That sounds perfectly sensible. A small adjustment, a bit of understanding.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But what actually happened when she went for that social science exam on Monday? It was, well, the opposite of accommodating.
So no separate desk inside.
No. Instead, they told her to sit outside the classroom.
Yeah.
On the steps.
Just like that.
Just like that. For 2.5 hours. Trying to do this important exam. Think about it, sitting on concrete steps for that long. Never mind the mental side of it. Being singled out like that when you're already stressed about an exam.
That's awful and hard to believe, but the really strange part is it happened again.
That's what's so baffling. You'd think after Monday someone might have thought, hang on, this isn't right, let's figure out something better.
You'd hope so. A bit of reflection, maybe.
Apparently not. Because on Wednesday, the family went to check on her during her next exam.
Yeah.
And there she was, same spot, on the steps, writing her paper. Again, her classmates inside, her outside.
Okay, that's when the father stepped in.
Yes. He went and spoke to the school authorities directly. And the response he apparently got, it's just staggering.
What did they say?
According to reports, they asked him, is this a big problem?
Is this a big... Seriously?
Seriously, it just shows this massive disconnect, right? Like a total failure to see the indignity, the discomfort, the basic unfairness of it.
And of course, something like this in 2025, it wasn't going to stay quiet for long.
Oh, definitely not. By Thursday, the next day, April 10th, someone had taken a video or photo.
Ah, the inevitable video.
Exactly. And that image of her on the steps, it just took off online. Social media went wild.
I can imagine. The reaction must have been huge. People seeing a kid treated like that just for having her period.
Immediate outrage. Intense and understandable, really.
And that kind of public pressure usually gets things moving, doesn't it?
It certainly did here. The director of matriculation schools, Apal Anismi, he ordered an inquiry straight away
Good.
and told them to issue a show cause notice to the school, basically demanding they explain themselves.
So asking them, why on earth did you do this?
Pretty much. And he even talked about sending out a circular to all schools in the district
About what?
about how to handle these situations properly, respectfully. Basically, don't do this memo.
Right. A guideline for basic decency.
And at the same time, the local education officials, the chief educational officer, R. Balamurali, and the DEO for private schools, Uday Athaniamal, they actually went to the school themselves.
They visited in person.
Yes, to investigate firsthand, which really shows how seriously they were taking it by then, especially with all the public attention.
And it didn't stop there, did it? I read the police got involved, too.
Yeah, the assistant superintendent of police, Christy Singh, she started an inquiry as well.
Wow. Police inquiries over exam seating. That's quite something.
It tells you how far it had escalated.
Mm.
A local politician, Bisanthil Balaji, even made a public statement saying the police would take action if needed. It just snowballed.
It really did. But amidst all this official action and public anger, the father's reaction was different, wasn't it?
It was really striking. You might expect, pure rage, demands for heads to roll, but his take was much more measured.
What did he say? How did he frame it?
He reportedly said they didn't see it as, deliberate discrimination aimed at hurting her, but rather, and this is the quote, just dumb.
Just dumb. Wow, that's blunt and kind of powerful.
Isn't it? He clarified, look, all we asked for was a separate spot inside, a comfortable spot inside the building. We never asked for her to be put outside on the cold steps.
So, less malice, more sheer lack of thought.
That seems to be his read on it. A failure of basic common sense. He mentioned his daughter had really bad leg pain after sitting on the steps on Monday.
Of course you would.
And then to see it happen again on Wednesday.
Yeah.
That was upsetting. But when they complained, they got that brush off. Is this a big problem?
That phrase again, it's just incredible. It really shows how these attitudes can take root, doesn't it? Even when it's clearly harming a child's education and well-being.
Completely. And the father, while he acknowledged a relative was the one who shared the video online, his main concern seemed to be just making sure she could finish her other exams somewhere comfortable, somewhere decent.
Which brings us back to that bigger picture, I guess. These taboos around menstruation, they are still around. In India and other places.
They definitely are. Societal norms about isolation or restriction, they still exist and impact people.
But is forcing a girl onto the school steps for an exam really about tradition? Or is it something else?
That's the crucial question here, isn't it? It feels much less like adhering to some ancient custom and much more like, well, that phrase we saw, lazy logistics with a side of cruelty.
Lazy logistics, yeah. Did they genuinely think she was gonna, contaminate the classroom?
It seems like some underlying, probably unspoken belief like that was at play, which is just nonsensical today. We have sanitary products, we understand hygiene.
It feels like a really poor knee-jerk reaction based on outdated ideas, not some carefully considered traditional practice.
Exactly, and this is a private school, remember? A matriculation higher secondary school. Parents pay significant fees.
You'd expect a certain standard of care, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
A basic level of understanding and, frankly, decency.
You really would. You'd think they'd have the resources, the awareness to handle it better.
Yeah.
Even just finding a spare chair in an empty office or a quiet corner inside would have been leagues better than the steps.
Absolutely. Anything but leaving her outside like that.
And that school response, is this a big problem? It just screams volumes about the gap between their view and, well, reality. The reality for the student and the reality of the public reaction.
It definitely raises questions about their priorities. Student welfare doesn't seem top of the list there.
Not in that moment, certainly. But, through all this, the student herself, her resilience is pretty remarkable.
Oh, absolutely. Can you imagine sitting through a long, important exam on concrete steps, dealing with period discomfort, probably feeling embarrassed and singled out, and still trying to focus?
It takes real strength. Real grit. You have to give her immense credit for just getting through it.
You really do. And maybe, just maybe, this whole incident, because it got so much attention, might make some of her classmates think, about fairness.
Let's hope so. So wrapping this up, the timeline seems clear. The period starts, the family informs the school, the unacceptable situation on Monday.
The repeat on Wednesday, the family seeing it, the father's just dumb assessment.
Right. And then the fallout. The video goes viral. Massive public outcry. Officials stepping in education department, even police.
Show cause notices, district-wide circulars threatened. The system reacted, at least publicly.
Yes, But zooming out, it forces us to think about those wider menstruation taboos again. Are they really what drove this specific action?
Or was it more, like you said, bad planning, zero empathy, maybe dressed up vaguely as how things are done? That lazy logistics with cruelty line really sticks.
It does. And the school's apparent failure to grasp the severity that is this a big problem, it highlights a worrying disconnect. It really speaks to the need for more sensitivity, more critical thinking in our schools.
Definitely. But ultimately, you keep coming back to the student herself, her determination in such a crummy situation.
Absolutely. And it leaves you wondering, doesn't it, how many other little unquestioned rules or habits exist in institutions? Things that seem minor on the surface, but
Yeah.
actually create real barriers,
Yeah.
real indignities for people, completely unnecessarily. Things that just defy common sense but keep happening because, well, that's how it's done.
Yeah. What unseen hurdles are out there because of thinking like that? It's
Oh, no.
definitely something to chew on.